Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Under Construction. This is episode 32, half a stack of episodes. I'm your host, Ellis, otherwise known as Train Man, and we have no music today, as is customary when I have a guest.
Hi.
That was probably very quiet. That's your hi. That's your hi right there. Anyways, Madison's here, and she's going to be looking on to this enthralling episode of Under Construction, where we're going to try and get a little bit farther towards the Mason Valley interlocking. Either that, or I need to figure out what to do with my highway. That's sort of the big thing. That's what I'm worried about. Because I've set this thing up to go over here. I set it to go up in this direction. I don't really have anywhere for it to go after that. There's a cliff here. And I think I need to put some thought into... Put some thought into where this highway is going to go. So let's do a little bit of that if I can get my camera under control. Where's highway? So I'm going to go into buildings, objects, into splines, and grab this. There's the grab tool on it, but I already had it. So, yeah, we're going to go this way. We are on Tane Service Pack 2 Hotfix 1, so there are a few changes. The most striking of which is the fact that the map is an awful lot darker. The greens don't pop as much, although the textures are still the same. It's not as vibrant, which I think is interesting. Let me see if they fixed... Oh. No, they did not fix that. I'm getting double gradients on all the tracks still. Strange. But I'm going to leave that like that. These guys are slightly different colored than these guys. I'm not sure why. I assume it's because 10 meter grid? 5 versus 5 meter grid, maybe? I don't know. The colors are a little bit strange. Anyways, yeah, back to the roadway before I get too distracted. Before I get too distracted, actually, we should handle the comments from last episode. So, first off is the easy one. Bradley Cure says, there was a F7A on my local Christmas train. Was your Christmas train the CSX one, perchance? Because we talked about that F7... Oh no, was that an F3? I don't know, there was a covered wagon on one of those things. What was your local Christmas train? I would like to know. Because then I can tell you if your paint scheme on that F unit looked good or not. You can give my review. Hashtag rate my paint scheme. We need to get this to be... Oh, that's not flat at all. You think I can probably push it more towards this hillside. But then again, it's a road. It doesn't care all that much. It doesn't matter all that much. I need my curves to be more or less sane, but emphasis on the more or less. So extend it, straighten it. I've noticed that a good way to do this, and I've done it a lot on the show. I haven't really talked about it all outright, but when you're building something, whether it be a roadway or a railway, having a sort of straight curve mentality. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Maybe I can come down that way.
You're in the ground.
Yeah, I'm very in the ground. Well, I'll be able to get out of the ground. The problem is getting out of it with style.
Why don't you build a tunnel?
I will. Well, not a tunnel. We're not that deep. I'm going to be building a TJ tunnel. Otherwise known as a very steep, or very deep cut.
Troy tunnel?
No, that'd be the opposite. Actually, that would be the opposite of a TJ tunnel. A single block long tunnel that's barely below the surface. A TJ tunnel, by definition, is a cut that is so deep that it might as well be a tunnel.
RTJ tunnel?
Yeah, RTJ. It's named after him.
Okay.
He pioneered it in one of his routes. And by pioneered it, I mean he did it and we made fun of him for it.
You gotta answer the other question.
I will in a minute.
Before you get distracted.
Well, too late. I need to sort of sort this out. See, I can do this, I can do all this, and then sort of straighten it.
Even out the ground.
Well, I'll have to sort out the ground. But the ground is like this. This is the ground. I made the ground. I did make the ground. I am God. But
Sure you are.
I'm building around the ground. I'm doing it more realistically in that the ground is there before you try to lay roads or rails through it. Because that's how it works in real life. In real life, you don't get to build the ground around your things after you put them there. You have to deal with what the earth looks like.
So you can't do that.
Well, in reality, you do that a little bit. See, that's a I almost called it a thick cut, extra thick. It's steep and it's deep, and the problem is I can't get like a nice slope on it. I should probably go through and do that. Because if you don't, you end up with these very sharp edges, which are unrealistic. That might be realistic, but for the most part, they aren't. Yeah. This is only slightly off. Do it like that. Let's do that again so that we get a little bit more built up on that side. Okay, so to help this, I'm going to use the plateau tool with a very small radius, like that, so it's that big, higher sensitivity, and I'm going to be brushing in this direction to raise the area that's next to the embankment, up to the level of the embankment, or about halfway. And we'll get a little bit of a gentler slope. It'll look a little bit more realistic, a little bit better too, because right now it doesn't look all that good. So wherever you click with the plateau tool is where the game is going to try and put the ground level. And so if you release the button and then click again, it'll pick a new height wherever your cursor is. Right there. And so as I'm getting about halfway down, when I get this to the level I want it, I'll click over here and then do the lower half of the embankment. It generally looks a little bit better. It looks a little bit more natural, which has its pros and cons, because it's not natural, it's man-made. But it looks a little bit more like you'd actually see. You wouldn't see these sheer cliffs next to a roadway like that. You might see it in a railroad. You would not normally see it in a road. Not for something of this size. And I don't mean this. I mean for this, you might see some sheer cliffs sometimes. But not this close to the roadway. And not really that short either. If you really were going through some difficult portions of terrain where you had to do a lot of drilling and blasting, then you might see cliffs where they had to blast away. So, let me do this embankment up to about here, and then I'll go and read the other comment, or I'll get part of the way through it, because it's a longer comment. It's by Exer the Blue Lion. He's been good with writing me some more long-form stuff that I can address in multiple pieces, which is nice. Alright. But yeah, this is looking better already. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to do this for a lot of things. See, I've been looking at my hills. My pre-mountains, I guess. And a lot of them aren't bad. These are ones after I sort of figured that out. But my hills are almost too hilly. There's too much change in a small area, and I addressed this a little bit last episode. I talked about how things were good, but they weren't quite great, because they reflected a little bit of the way Earth looks, but at the same time they were too bumpy. You can have some steep hills, but having bumps, on the other hand, is not great. Like This maybe isn't the most realistic, but whatever. This is easier to do than, they would have done this before they built a bridge across, like from here to here. Because bridges are expensive. Expensive to build, expensive to maintain. Should pull this back a little bit. Oops, wrong thing. I need splines, not tracks. While tracks are splines, the tools are not interchangeable. There. We'll come back to that. Okay, so Ice of the Blue Lion says, cool intro. Which, thank you. When we did that bit at the end of the episode, I believe I said out loud something to the effect of, this would be a good intro. And so I decided that segment where I had turned off the UI so that you couldn't see the controls and stuff, and we were just running along the causeway, I figured, this is a pretty good opportunity to use, it's a pretty good opportunity to make an intro, because I still didn't have one for the series after 30 episodes. Figured it was about time. And I did have a couple of thoughts about it, which one of them was, as the series progresses and we get more done over there, I could update the intro. But that wouldn't really be representative of the series as a whole, because it's one small area and we'll be done with it relatively soon compared to the whole of Tolbrand. Compared to the whole map, which we've got a long way to go. Plenty of time to get there. Ooh, is that too high? Do I want to bring this to the other side of this? It is a roadway. They've never been too caring about keeping things on the level. But let's try this. Let's see how this looks. No, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. This side's okay. This side's not great. So when you're building, you're so much more inclined to go for embankments where the road is raised up versus cuts where you're making holes in the ground, because you can actually see what you're doing when the road is hovering in midair, as opposed to when it's not. I really wish the road would show up on the map, though. I'm just getting it. I have to zoom out to here and then look at it. He also says, also make sure you download all of the TRC crossings on the DLS, since they are just like modern crossings down in the US and all over the world. Okay, so I assume it's TRC on the download station? I do need them to be passable in a 1950s context, but I'll take a look at them. I have the ones that I have currently, which I've used a little bit. Oh, I should have gone this way. Oh well. We have an oversight. I'll have to make another bridge. Or something. But I could get across this way if I really wanted to. If I cut this back to here, I could probably get across and... But I'd still need a bridge, I'd just need a shorter one. Yeah, if I cut this way, but I'd still need to put a bridge over here. Because if you think about it, the reason this is shaped like this is because a bunch of water flows down here. And so if I were to put the road across here, it would get flooded. In a realistic context, which is what I'm trying to do. Also, these areas just aren't showing me terrain. That's strange. There's terrain here. No.
Because that happens in real life.
Yeah, you don't need that though. I need to keep the road on this side of the tracks. Because what's going to happen up here is the road is going to go off in this direction. Around this swamp. So this whole area is a big estuary. The railroad runs out onto these bridges. Like this one. This is Bridgicus Maximus. Through this swampy area which the road avoided. By going around. But it runs through, and out the other side. So yeah, I need to pay attention to the road a little bit more. So yeah, TRC crossings, and then he says you don't need to read out the website, Ellis. I might not have done it, but you asked me not to, or you said I didn't need to. So the website is https://sites.google.com/site/trcv2english/ to learn about these crossings, and since they are on the DLS, you'll be happy for this too. Yes, I am. TRC also has an invisible interlocking thing too, so no need to put an interlocking tower under the ground. But that's half the fun of it. I will have to look into that. I want to know how big the interlocking thing is. I have to download those, and I have to download what are they? BDW stuff, or else Mason will yell at me in every video for all time. Apparently, that's what he tells me. So just like the 5-meter grid thing, I think it's mandatory. Okay, sorry, back. I keep getting distracted trying to look down the track to like, oh, where are we going to put the track next? But I really should do this road first, because this road is going to get left behind if I stop paying it attention. There's another road that already happened with. Let's bring this up a little bit. See the guardrail emerge from the ground. Alright, so we're going to turn it this way. And we're going to go down as best we can. But we're going to cross this way. I'll put the bridge in a minute. But I just need to figure out the general direction that we're going in. That's high. That is extremely high, actually. We'd really want to get down lower in order to make that crossing. So
You should have the tracks in the road run parallel.
yeah. If I bring the road down here, this is lower, and I can get across more easily.
You'd have to manage over that hill, though.
Yeah. If I put the road here... Nah. That's more doable. This is awkward, though. I shouldn't have straightened, or I shouldn't have advanced these spline points. Alright, let's clean those up. What is this going to look like if I just attach these? It's going to look dumb. Oh, straighten it. Yeah, that doesn't look great. I have to add a couple more spline points. The other thing when you're doing turn straight, like I mentioned earlier, is you don't want to have an S-curve on any one piece of spline, because it will look bad. And it probably won't be that realistic either, if you care about that sort of thing. I have plenty of route ideas that are... I have some that are fairly realistic. I have some that are real, like I want to get a DEM for them. There's something from the U.S. Geological Survey map imported into Train, so it's real ground that I'm working on. Because you can do all sorts of cool stuff like that. But, those take a back seat. But there are some unrealistic projects that I'd like to do as well. I've talked for a while about a map that isn't beautiful scenic-wise, but is very good operations-wise, so you can have all sorts of like multiplayer operating sessions and stuff like that on that map without worrying about people not being able to run it, and I'd be able to put it together fairly quickly because I wouldn't spend several months building a town this time. Alright, so I'm going to grab the bridge. I don't know what the name of it is, so I'm just going to go back and find it. There it is. Yoink. We only have one good bridge. And I could sort of come up with my own, but...
Cata bridge.
Yeah. Oh, and I can't put the bridge down after the road, so I need to put the bridge down on its own. Just line it up. That doesn't look bad. Alright, let's line it up properly. Let's grab the road, attach it at this end, attach it at... I grabbed the bridge that time. Nope. Grab the road, attach it there. It's sunk. Excuse me, Greyhound bus. There. Okay, we've got a bridge, we've got a railway, we've got a road. We're getting somewhere. I'm going to bring it around this way, because that just looks like it makes sense. This way, let's see, there's a rise here, and then it goes more or less downhill. So I straighten this out. What was that? I'll look at that later. Link. Okay. Okay. I need to bring the straight section out a little bit more because the curve is doing a weird thing. And the thing with... See, this is something that I can actually apply for my classes. When you're building a road or you're building a railroad, and I've talked about this before, but you want to be able to not purchase and ship in any fill, so any rock to fill in an embankment, and at the same time, you don't want to have to pay to truck away any debris. So the way you manage that is you make the amount that you're cutting, so the amount that you have to remove, and the amount that you're filling in for embankments, approximately the same.
Did you actually learn something in class?
Yes, I did.
Yay.
And in fact, it's a proud point for me because I had to do it twice for different classes. I had to do that, and Donna Grace can tell you this. We were working on that project, or a project where we had to design a road. We had to plan it through this area that we were given, get it from one corner to the other, and we had to, however we sent it through, we had to make the cut and fill equal. And so, you're given a bunch of tools to do this, the program has a bunch of tools to do this, but, you have the top-down profile, so you're just planning where the road is going to go, and then you have the side-on profile, so you're planning how the road is going to go relative to the ground it's on top of. And then you move the road up and down, basically saying, okay, I need to cut into the ground a little bit here. I need to, put an embankment here.
So exactly what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so exactly
program.
what I'm doing here, except you'd look at it from the side and you'd be able to see the road through it. And you'd be able to say, okay, I'm changing this here, changing this here. You'd also have a bunch of other, bits of information, like the gradient of the road, how steep it is. And you also have the radius of all of the turns, including top and bottom. So when the road goes over a crest, you'd see the radius of that because there's a minimum, there's a maximum and a minimum for that. You can't have it be too tight because you don't need cars getting air. There isn't a spline point here, is there? No, I need one. There we go. So we have a few straights in a row. That's not bad. Right, pull this back out this way. But I adjusted it once, and I went, that looks about right. And I hit calculate, so it'll calculate, okay, this is the amount that you need to remove, and this is the amount that you need to fill in. It's your cut and fill diagram. And it came out almost perfect, like within 1% of one another. And I went, alright, work's done. And I left it at that, because I only had to touch it once. And it was finished. Alright, why is this acting so strangely? Is there another spline point that I'm not... Oh, it's because it's on a hill. Do this, do that. Oh, no, there is another spline point in here. I couldn't see it, it was underground. Straighten that. That's not straightened, is it? Okay, things are... I'm losing track of which things I've straightened and which things I've not, and that's a problem. Whatever. It's straight enough. Nobody's going to be actually driving on the road, so what does it matter? I'm not going to hide any invisible track in the road. I have thought about it, but I don't think I'm going to do it. Isoline also says, also, will you join Approach Medium's Discord channel too? There is a lot of Tane users in there, people who reskin locos and build routes maps like myself. Here is the link for the Discord server. Hope to see you there. Well, I unfortunately don't use Discord, but I appreciate the invitation. I've not really looked, because it's not really a priority of mine, but looked around for, you know, the people in my group, the people that I know that do reskins and stuff, and that's how I have a couple of VMR things, Vulgar Mountains Railroad, and Zion and Skyline. No, I have Zion and Skyline things. Mason's been making me Zion and Skyline things. And Milky did that as well. I don't know why I have just that. I've talked about that before. I've talked about the fact that there are 2 railroads that I currently have on the map, and the things that have been made for me are for neither of those railroads. There's only one other major railroad that stuff is for, and I don't have anything for it. Or, you know, and that's what everything is for, I should say. What everything I've gotten so far is for. Alright, we've got to get across this, which is a little bit rocky by the looks. Let's go this way.
It's a rocky road.
Yeah.
It's not ice cream.
Straighten that out. Move this. Alright. Advance it so that they stay level. They don't stick to the ground. Alright, and now flatten that out and turn that, or, you know, do the same thing with that. Now we have, what you really need is a smooth curve, because if you don't have a smooth curve, it will look off, first of all, and second of all, it won't be realistic. This area has been pretty easy to put the...
Why are you building a road
Right
if
through.
no one's going to be on it?
Because roads exist.
Yeah, but why are you building it?
Why wouldn't you build it?
If you're only going to be using the trains, why would you put the effort into it if you're not going to use it?
So it looks proper. Why would I spend weeks building this town? Hold on. Wait for it. Let everything load in. It's a big town. It's actually not a big town. Pretty small town. I mean, it's like 1,000 people-ish, was sort of my guesstimate at how many people live in the town of Olive.
A real place?
Nope. Just this. It's completely fictional. I even have a whole history written up for it. But, you know, it's just scenery. It's stuff that goes alongside the railroad. And, you know, you're not going to run a train. You know, trains in real life don't run through blank, gray wilderness.
No, but the train that I was on ran through trees and trees and trees and trees and trees.
Oh, and there will be plenty of that. But generally you'll have things that follow along, like roads, or at the very least power lines, in the old days. Telegraph lines.
There.
So, you go through and you put together, you build your world. And you don't have to, you know, like I was saying, the other route idea that's sort of the one that's the most viable in my head is the quick and dirty one that's good for operations. And that wouldn't really have this caliber of scenery at all. It would basically just be tracks.
Paint the ground.
And towns, if any. Yeah, it would just be tracks with ground painted and trees and industries. You know, you might have passenger stations, but towns themselves would consist of, you know, a dozen buildings. Nothing really groundbreaking. You know, it would exist just as a route to run things on and to, you know, load cargo and unload cargo and that kind of stuff. Not as a route to drive through and admire the scenery. It would also probably be a lot smaller in scale. See, the thing that a lot of people do, or, you know, I refrain from calling it the mistake that a lot of people make, because it's not necessarily a mistake if you aren't going for the ultra-realistic, and that's sort of a theme with me in working on this route and the advice that I've given throughout this series. That might not necessarily apply to you. See, now we're at the edge of the map. It might not necessarily apply to you if you aren't building a route that's going for ultra-realism like this is. And admittedly, this isn't even that ultra-realistic. There are plenty of flaws. There are plenty of issues with...
Like needing a bridge?
Yeah. No.
That's not water.
No, this was me marking the edge of where the estuary would be.
Estuary.
Yes, it's like a swamp but with salt water. Think by Galilee. So this is your estuary, and this is all going to be very, very green and covered in thick, thick grass. But yeah, if you see any ground painting at this area, it was me brainstorming, basically. Water is water.
Water just appears.
No, I make the water. See, and with Tane, you can. Yeah. Well, see, I have a beach. There's a beach in Olive. And there's beach houses all along this area.
Roy Carpenter's a second.
Yeah. When it wants to load in.
And so, does the beach get, like, not beach anymore after a certain number of time? After a certain amount of time?
If the world changed, yeah. If the world had erosion and stuff. But thanks to Tane being Tane, you can create water that actually changes elevation. You couldn't do that in other Trance games. This is 2 bridges, that's why it looks weird. But this is a river that flows downhill. You know, this is going uphill, 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 uphill. You know, into the hills here.
The invisible blue.
Yes.
The light blue.
Yes. The light blue was me sketching out where the river would go, and the see-through blue is actually water. If you go underneath it, your screen turns blue. So, but using, the water tool here, you can place down water at different elevations, and it'll connect. So if you put down water that's higher than the water next to it, it'll get a slope between them, which looks kind of dopey, but it looks better than what you had before, which was water up and then water next to it that's
like
lower.
Minecraft.
Yeah. No, Minecraft is better. Minecraft is better than that. Alright. So, we also have some Z fighting going on here. Which is that flickering. It's called Z fighting because it is 2 things that are at the exact same Z. So the exact same height. And they are fighting. The textures are fighting with one another to see who takes precedence. So that's why you see that flickering.
So why don't you get rid of the coloring?
What, the blue lines?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm going to paint it over with forest floor or whatever at some point anyways. Right now it's good as a reminder. Oops. Right now it's good as a reminder of what I was trying to do. I put that there. See, there are bits where I've missed sort of the coastline. But this is that. And then we have some little islands,
like
etc.
Like a little hourglass in there.
What?
Zoom out. It's a little hourglass.
Oh, yeah. Hourglass figure. But then I spent a good couple of hours making this, which is just basically an island with a channel through it, and you're going to be able to drive a boat through here.
So what is the name of this map?
Tolbrand. The Tolbrand Peninsula, which this is the very, very beginning of it, and I'll show you for scale. How much time? Yeah, we have tons of time, so I'm going to pull up the map or if you guys don't mind. So, unfortunately you guys won't be able to see it because that's not how this works. This is the map of the Tolbrand Peninsula. We have a total of 9 different towns. Olive is here. That's the town we have built. Let me orient the map properly.
And then you can have other maps around it?
I'm gonna have other towns, and it's gonna extend this way. So we're looking at this right here, which things aren't quite the same shape. But to give you a sense of scale, so this is Olive. And from here to here is about 15 miles of track. I haven't finished it yet. That's what I'm currently working on. And for reference on this map, that is about from here to here. So, I spent 30 episodes on this, and now I'm here, or I'm about here, with no scenery. So, it's going to be a long time. This map is going to be enormous. And that is one of the ultra-realism things that I'm, sort of trying to point out. And that's what I was getting to when I was trying to say the mistake that people make often. So, the thing with the Tolbrun Peninsula is that it's massive. That's sort of the whole shtick. The fact of the matter is, trains' maps aren't normally this big, and by consequence, trains' maps aren't normally as correct in terms of realism.
Yeah, they're all square.
No, not necessarily. Not if you're, not if you're not TBA and his island route. Throwbacks. No, because so you start out with one square, then you can add more squares. Add tile.
That's how I made my crazy 06 route.
Yeah. So you can turn this down to a 5-meter grid, which means that the ground will be more precise. That's all that means.
I like my 06 route.
But this is all Z fighting going on here. But that's because the ground is at 0, and so is the water.
Why can't you see anything when you zoom out?
Because the ground is too close to the water. Before, water took precedence, but now that doesn't happen anymore. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to sort of take care of the edge by doing this, which I'm using the lowest sensitivity I possibly can to raise the ground, so that we now have an edge where the Z fighting will stop because the water is hidden. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to lower the ground. That's going to be the water, so that the water will appear. And then I'm going to have to do the same thing for here. And the rest of the water, we're just going to have to get it low enough so that the Z fighting stops. And then once we do that, we can look at it a little bit better and figure out where the deep parts are going to be, where the shallows are going to be.
I'm just coloring them.
Well, what I'm actually doing is I'm lowering the ground. See, the gray tile is the ground, and I have water overlaid at the exact same spot. But if I lower the ground sinks below the water, so you can see the water completely.
Missed a few spots along the edges.
Yep. Oh, that's got to stay. That's supposed to be an island. I'll see what I want to do with that in a little bit. That was a thought. That was an idea in my head that was... okay, so now we're starting to get stuff deep enough. The other thing we need to do is we need to pay attention to where stuff is not deep enough by these little dots that are on the map. That's one of them. Get rid of that. Another one is over here. And then another one's over there. Another one's over here. This is one of the more annoying things that I have to do, but it's just to make the water all deep enough so you don't get these little dots on the map. There's this guy, which is right on the border, and then there's one over there, and that should be all except for this guy. Right there. Okay, so I've more or less traced a line here where I want the coastline to be. So I'm going to be running the rail in a few tiles, actually. And I've got to think about really what I want to do with that and what the exact purpose of that is. But first things first is getting all this water to be deep enough, to be as deep as it ought to be. And the easiest way to tell that, which I've noticed previously, is if you can see the outline of the tool, then it's not deep enough. So keep swirling it around until, see, I can't see it there, but I can see it there. Right here is not deep enough. So yeah, we're getting this deep enough. As well, you know, it's either you can see the tool, or you can see it on the map. Either one, it happens at about the same depth. I think it happens at exactly the same depth. Water starts covering up basically the next layer of stuff, which is like the ground layer of stuff. Doesn't show up anymore, because it's that far underneath water. Alright, so there's a hole here, And then I need to figure out what I want to do with sort of the shallows here at this barrier island, which I think I'm just going to get rid of entirely. This right here, because it was a thought of where I was going to put the coastline initially, but I'm bringing the coastline in a little bit because Tolbrin Peninsula calls for the peninsula to narrow quite a bit, and if we don't do that, then we're going to be cutting short the VMR, which runs across the peninsula. So we need to make sure the peninsula tapers enough that the run from here to the other side of the peninsula is long enough that it can reach sufficient heights, which is, I kind of just want the railroad to have a little bit of hilliness to it, and if there isn't enough room over its length, it just can't get any higher. It can't get any higher in altitude. But I will do that to sort of take care of those islands a little bit. Alright, so we have some weird bulges along here. We have a couple of dots we need to squelch. Right there and right there. There we go. And I need to make pretty much all of this ocean, which that's going to be another problem entirely. That's just a particularly deep spot. There are a couple of dots here though. I think there's a slightly different threshold for dots now, because there were definitely not dots all over here before. So let's have a moment to clean up dots. Yeah. That's when I would let the music play if I had the music. I always play the Train Fever soundtrack. I had 2 disputes over the same song with the same people who thought it was their song. I suppose the algorithm thought it was somebody else's song. I talked about this. But I've gotten them both back. One of them is okay now, and the other one's not. So that's interesting.
Oh, man.
So I normally play the Train Fever soundtrack in the background of these videos because it's a great soundtrack, and I don't play Train Fever on the channel anymore. I play Transport Fever, which has a different soundtrack. So, in order to get my fix, in order to make the videos a little bit more interesting, what I decided to do was just look up that soundtrack on YouTube and play it. There happens to be a band out there that sounds extremely similar to the Admiral James T, which is the band that made that soundtrack for Train Fever. And I 2 or 3 times now have gotten copyright hits for their band as if they owned the song that was in the Train Fever soundtrack that happens to sound a lot like their song. So
therefore you cannot play a specific song in that soundtrack.
Yeah.
They commented and said don't play this song.
Well, no, I got a copyright strike, or not a strike, but I got a notification saying, you're using these guys' song. We know you're using these guys' song. They're not telling you to take down their video. They're not telling you to take down your video. They're just going to be using the ad revenues. They're going to be granted the ad revenues from it because you're using their song. And so I disputed it and said it's not their song, it's this other song that's on the Train Fever soundtrack, and I have permission to use that because that was part of the agreement in buying the game. I now have the license to use that music in Let's Plays and stuff, and one of them passed. One of them, YouTube said, oh, okay, yeah, we understand, it's not their song. And the other one apparently is their song? It's the same song, and I know for a fact it's not. So one of them went through and the other one didn't, which is a little bit strange. And it's inconsistent, but I at least...
now whenever it comes on, you have to fast forward?
No, whenever it comes on, I'm just going to let it play. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. I'm just pointing out that it's a little bit strange that only one of them went through when the other one didn't, when essentially, or no, not essentially, when it was the same scenario twice. So it's just inconsistent. Alright, so I'm going to have to bring the rails in, like really far inland, which means I'm also going to need more tiles over here. So I could hug the coast here, which means I don't need more tiles unless I cross this line here. Because one of my personal things is that I can't have I can't have tracks be that close to a tile boundary. The other thing I need to do is I need to get the ground up high enough. That's a hill. I just made a hill. I need to get the ground up high enough in order to receive the tracks. Right now, the ground here is fairly low. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go sort of around the edge of what I think is going to be this area. So from here around to here. And I'm going to raise up the ground to a certain level. Then in the middle of it, I'm going to use the plateau tool or the the general raise height tool. There's some Z fighting going on back here. Was I going to do something over there? Is that why there was water there? Or did I just put water everywhere? Whatever. I'm not doing anything there now. New ideas have superseded old ones. And that might be too much work anyways. But either way, I need to get the ground to be at a reasonable level. Because I don't need to run the train on a high embankment over here. It wouldn't make any sense. And this is where things really get difficult sometimes, because I'm faced with a massive, empty, gray world. And I effectively need to shape it into something that makes sense, but at the same time, something that is beneficial to me, and I have a lot of shaping ahead of me. I have a lot of shaping to do. So, the easiest thing, the thing that I used to use a lot before, is terrain tracks, where I would just flatten the land to a certain level using them, or create a certain slope using them. But I've sort of gotten away from them because I feel like they're more of an intermediate technique, and I feel like they don't necessarily provide me with the quality that I would like, or what's the word? The ability to change small things that I would like.
It's cheating, basically.
No, it's not cheating. Nothing's cheating. It's a simulator.
Well, if you're trying to make it ultra realistic, then doing something like that wouldn't be realistic. You have to go in and adjust grounds and stuff like that in real life.
Yeah.
Basically, that would be cheating.
No. It's just another way to adjust ground. You don't adjust ground like this in real life. I'm creating ground to put rail on. But I'm not creating ground specifically for the rail. I'm just creating ground. The thing that terrain tracks do, which is very nice, is they let you take a large area and they let you give it a singular gradual slope, which is something that's incredibly difficult to do by any other method, first of all. And second of all, something that's incredibly useful a lot of the time, because other than that you end up doing what I'm doing, which ends up with a very bumpy ground, which necessarily isn't necessarily realistic. If I wanted to go all out, what I would do was go over with terrain tracks first, and then come back with the brush tool like I'm doing now, and add these little differences.
Select a giant bunch of ground and do that?
No, this is as large as it goes.
I know in Locomotion you can highlight a bunch of stuff and it'll adjust it all, right?
Yeah. But this is as large as this tool goes. Even in Locomotion, the tool only gets so big. What I could do, and what I've thought of doing, is using these, which are displacement things, measures, I don't know what you want to call them, but you select, slope. Slope would be a good one. You select an area on the ground, and then you fill it, and it creates a slope. But it's extremely imprecise and difficult to work with. It's been in the game since at least 06, if not 04.
It was 04?
Yeah.
Is that one we don't speak of?
No, that was a favorite of many, many people. Why is this square? Oh. Okay, I can make slopes like this, I guess. That's interesting.
Now imagine a train going on that.
That's interesting. It's not good, though. Alright, reset displacement. Now I've got these weird bumps because I did that. Okay. I'm going to increase the sensitivity. I need to get some land in here. Frankly, it doesn't really matter. The thing is, it doesn't matter all that much what the ground really looks like. It just has to be the same or be the correct basic shape. It needs to have the hills, or it needs to have the parts that are supposed to be higher than the other parts, higher than the other parts. And that's about it. You know, you can do a lot in the meantime. You can do a lot of nitpicky stuff. You can do a lot of little things. And I've been very careful, because I sort of become attached to this. I've been very careful to ensure that water always has a place to flow out of a build. So if I'm building a basin area, there at least has to be one exit for water to flow out of. Because if there were not a place for water to flow out of in real life, you would either have a lake there, or water would make a way to flow out of there.
You build a dam.
Well, yeah, but that's plugging up the way out. That implies there's a way out, and then you filled it. So, that... And I have places... I don't have a place in mind where I'd like to put a dam, but I do have a couple of cool dam assets. Or damn cool assets. That I would like to use for a dam somewhere.
In theory, you could make the edge of the map a dam and just use that tool that you did and build up.
What do you mean?
That slope you just did?
Yeah.
You could do it on the edge of the map and it would go up.
Yeah.
So you could start at like where your cursor is, and then you could build the slope up that way.
So
and
the edge of the map was
act as
higher.
a dam.
Yeah. But I have actual dams.
Yeah, but if you want to be realistic about it, or you can be creative about it, or both.
I have a substation, I have a picnic area, I have this. I know I have a dam somewhere. Whatever.
Dam.
But
But you could
I mean,
be
yeah.
creative with it and do that.
Well, yeah, but my
The water
point
would
is,
also have a way up, 'cause it could go up and out.
water doesn't go up. Water flows downhill. Water doesn't flow uphill.
You also make a water.
Yes, but that implies a way out. There are only two things that are going to happen when you have a confined area. Either you have no rain, and thus no lake, or you have a lake.
Well, water goes up
No, it doesn't.
when it is in a wave. The wave goes up and crashes back down. So
Yeah, but that's
if
not
you
water.
have a
That's not water
wave-
flowing up a slope.
If you have a wave, it could go up the slope and crash back down.
Okay, but
And
how often?
eventually, it'll go up when there's no way out. It'll go up and up and up.
No, it won't.
That's what it did when we flooded.
Yeah, but that's because the water table of the ground around your house, when your basement floods, it's because the water table of the ground around your house has risen.
That's also what happened when the Warwick Mall flooded.
Mm-hmm. Because the water,
In the
because
river.
there's so much rain that,
The water built up
yeah,
and
But
came
it-
out.
but it doesn't flow up. It builds up. Hence the lake that I was talking about.
Okay, I'm wrong.
The reason that a basement floods is because the water table in the surrounding ground rises because the ground becomes saturated with water. So generally basement is built so that it doesn't dip below the water table in the ground around it. But in periods of heavy rains, the level of groundwater will rise, and if it gets to a point where it's above the floor of your basement, then your basement's going to be flooded.
Those aren't even.
No, they aren't. The important thing is making sure they're straight. But I think they're slightly curved.
Yeah.
Line this one up with...
You're gonna end up building a roundhouse.
Have one. I have two. They're both in olive. But my point was, when you have a depression in the earth, when you have a like a hole, and it rains, it's going to collect water. And because of that basic fact of life... What?
Your ground's not even.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's because it's higher than that.
That's what it says. Not even.
It's even. It's level. Because of the basic fact of life that water will collect in a depression and eventually overflow if you keep putting water into it, eventually water is going to find a way out of that depression. And thus you then have water carving an exit. So you will always have water flowing in some direction from uphill to downhill, and generally it'll want to collect. It'll want to collect from smaller streams into larger streams, into larger streams into the ocean. Into rivers, into the ocean. It's just a fact of nature, it's how water works. Water flows downhill. And water flows to the ocean. So, when I'm building any sort of terrain, I have to be conscious of the fact that water will flow out of it, or, would, hypothetically, in a situation where water would flow. Water doesn't flow in the game, but I treat it like it does. If I were to make an area that was completely surrounded by mountains, either water would be going out via some sort of subterranean exit, either like a cave, or like, oh, that's deep. That's very deep. Either like a cave, or like or just via groundwater. So either one or the other. If it's not doing that, then it's going to be a ring of mountains full of water. And if anybody has been to Crater Lake, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That's, very hard rock that doesn't allow water to permeate through it very well. So this entire volcanic caldera has filled completely with water, to an extent. And, and again, that's the thing that I'm trying to be conscious of. That's the thing that I think map makers need to be conscious of. Not even necessarily trains map makers, just people that make maps in general. Rivers will merge much more often than they will split. And unless you're in a delta. And water will always find a way out of somewhere. Water has to have a way out of somewhere. If not, it will pool. Water, by effect, is the most earth-shaping force, period. We have tectonic plates. They create mountains and earthquakes and some valleys, but and we have wind as well, and that generally whittles down mountains. But for the vast, vast, vast majority of earth shaping, it's water 100%. If you look at the way, if you live anywhere near a river, you'll notice that ground goes down to the river, and you have hills on either side, and it's because the river flowed through, and it cut out that area. Of course, you can go to the Grand Canyon for this as another prime example of water dealing with rock. But that's that's sort of the gist of it. You can see that water is cut through. Water will cut through anything. Water needs a way out. If I were to accidentally, if I were to make an area over here like this. This is a dip. It's a very subtle dip, but I can make it less subtle if I wanted to. But now we have a dip. There's no way for water to get out of this dip unless it starts spilling over the side. So it would have to be a lake until it starts spilling over the side. And you'd still have a lake, but then you'd have a lake with a waterfall coming out of it. And as well, in principle, that's how dams work. You're making a lake by taking the one exit that water normally has and plugging it with something man-made. You can get like some sand in a bucket or not a bucket, like a bin or something. Play around with that. Play around with water.
Just like your bucket overflowed.
Yes, exactly. But left alone, water will just sit there. If you don't add any more, it's not going to flood anywhere. If you don't blow on it, it's not going to make waves. or if you shake whatever it's sitting in or on, then it'll make waves. I need to get this track. Let's see. I think what I should be doing is I should be raising it. I should be getting it a little bit higher, because right now we're at 6.3 meters off the ground. And I kind of want it to be a little bit higher. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to induce a gradient here of 0.2. 0.2%. It will be subtle, but it's going to run for this entire length. And we'll see what we can get at the end of it. So that looks significant at the end of it. It's a 0.2% grade. So we've increased a couple of meters. 8.4 meters. I would like it to be higher than that. And so let's see, what is the height of the top of this rise right here? I'm going to use this tool to get height of that spot. 9.51. But it dips down to 8.4 or so. Either way, it's about 9. It's 8 to 9. And right now we have 8 point something. 8.4. That's good. That's alright. So I'm going to fill that in. I will fill in the edges, even though I don't necessarily like doing that, because it makes it look a little better, if not necessarily the most realistic. There we go. Okay. So we've got to continue in this direction. We have to go this way. I'm not sure if I want to stick along the coast or not. I'm not sure if I want to go more inland, but I do need to get to over here somehow. My intuition is telling me, or the voice in the back of my head is telling me, oh, just stay more inland. Save yourself the trouble, for now, of making the coastal line, and just go through some rolling hills.
What you could do is you could have two sets of that track, so you've got 4 tracks there. You could have 2 of them go along the coast, and 2 of them go inland, and have them meet up.
I could do that. That's actually clever. I think I may. So
Have them meet back up.
at the very least, I know I'm going to need more tiles, because I want the peninsula to come into probably about there. So I need a couple more tiles here at least. And then I'm going to need to fill in this area. The other thing is, I can probably get rid of all of these tiles. They're only ocean tiles, so they're not going to cost me that much in terms of time to build them. But it might afford me a little bit of... it might just save me a little bit of mental pain, mental anguish over that. Alright, so we now have a much thicker end here. So this is starting to look less and less like a rifle. Now it looks like a rifle with a big silencer. And so the thing that strikes me, though, the thing that you have to question, if we do that, you gotta wonder why. What would be the purpose to running 2 of the tracks separate to the other 2?
Well, if you take one of those, you could make more money because you've got a better view.
True, but
a lot of coastal trains are a lot more money because of the view, and it normally takes longer.
True.
So you can have the shorter route for less money, same destination, but shorter time. Or if you're someone who likes to take the if you like to look at the views and take an actual trip and look at things and be more comfortable and have stuff like that and get to your destination a little bit longer and take time to relax, then that would be a train you'd take if you're trying to be realistic about it.
Interesting you bring that up, because we have that scenario, but done on a much larger scale. So if we look at the map again, we have the Gilson Eastern, which is the blue line, and it runs all the way around the edge of the peninsula. Versus the VMR, which is a much more direct north-south link, which runs directly through the mountains.
Yeah, so why don't you do that?
Well, the VMR is this track here, which is going to run out this direction. And
Why are you building 4 tracks?
because it's a very high frequency main line. So we have 2 outer tracks for local services, which stop all the time, stop at every station, and the 2 inner tracks for services that only stop at major cities, so that the faster trains can pass the slower ones. And that's not including all of the freight service. So there will be freight trains, some will stop, often, and some will rarely stop. You'll have your through
So make one-
high-speed freights.
So do that for that, and then continue the other one going inland. So do that along the coast, and continue the other one going inland, doing the exact same thing, and have them all meet up at the same place, just like it does on the map.
Well, that's 2 different railroads. We're about here. The Gilson Eastern this is only Gilson Eastern trackage. This is our 4-track high-speed main line of that railroad.
Well, then you could still split it in half.
And I can, but here's the thing. It wouldn't matter all that much in this small scale. I like the idea that you have, but we're doing that. That only really works on the extremely large scale. On the small scale, if you have, there's virtually no way that we'd be, there's virtually no way that change here would cause an appreciable difference in the amount of time it takes to make it to Mason Valley, which is right there.
Right. Well,
Mason Valley
then
interlocking.
You just think, what do you want? What's going to be less time consuming, or if you want something more time consuming, what's going to be more time consuming? And what is it that you want? Do you want to, have something? Do you want to make a struggle and have to keep adjusting land and stuff like that, or do you just want to move around slightly around the coast and not have to deal with mountains and stuff?
Yeah, the coastal pain anyways. Like I was saying, I'm going to have to build the coast anyways. I'm going to have to build the coastline, but I might want to bring the tracks a little further inland because we've been hugging the coast for the entire time so far.
Also, kind of do it in the middle.
For a little bit of a change of pace. And
Do
for a little bit of
zipper.
sanity.
Do the zipper.
What do you mean?
Like, well, we were in the car the other day, and you had one going like this, and one, you were going like this, and make it a zipper.
No. That would be... Well, you also have to think about... The reason that I say why, and you have to think about this not from a convenience point of view, and not from a large-scale point of view, but what would be the reason that when you're rebuilding a 4-track mainline through this area, what would have to be there in order for you to not put all 4 tracks together? Because the 2 tracks that are towards the edge here, that are towards the coastline, are both southbound tracks. They're both coming this way. The 2 tracks that are this way are both northbound tracks, and there's no way you're going to fiddle with that.
Oh, I have one more suggestion for you.
Yes.
So that way the freight's not running on the main lines. Why don't you have one north and one? Add 2 more lines to it.
No, that'd be a lot.
Because
You
then
almost
have
never
2 freight tracks.
you almost never need more than a 6-track main line, or than a 4-track main line. 6 tracks is absurd.
So then make one for freight only.
This isn't the kind of era where you would see necessarily dedicated freight to passenger lines over this distance. Even 4 tracks for the Gilson Eastern is a lot. It's the kind of thing where you would necessarily look at that and say, these guys are crazy for building this many lines. Also, I'm making lumps again.
Just for something cool, you should do a horseshoe coach.
Yeah. Well, you're probably going to see a lot of that on the VMR.
You should do that. Like, if you want to go around the coast and curve out inland.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
Ready to go this way.
yeah, do like a horseshoe curve.
Well, horseshoe curve implies mountains. The Gilson Eastern avoids them. That's their job. That's their whole shtick. That's why you take it. So you have the faster route, although faster. Oh crap. Faster is not necessarily true. It's faster in velocity. It might not get you to the destination faster though. Crap. Yeah, that's right. All right, continue straight. More or less. we've got to go this way anyways, because I don't feel like building more over here. We've got to go this way, and so I'm going to brush the coast a little bit more. I'm just wondering if I'm going to pull it all the way into here, or I guess I'm just going to put it over here for now.
Or just go over it. Keep going straight over it.
No, this is all going to be water. All
yeah,
this.
Build bridges.
No, this is all going to be ocean. And I need to get over here. This is water.
There's a thing called a bridge.
Why would you build a bridge several miles long when you can just go along the ground?
Because it's cool.
No. That's not what we're here for. I want to make the map interesting, yes, but again, realism. I'm spending the time to try to make this as realistic as possible, and that's why that's why the necessary question is, why would you split the two tracks up? You need to have some reason that you can only fit two of the tracks through a certain area, and therefore you have to send the other two somewhere else. And I can't necessarily foresee a reason you do that along the coastline unless... No. Unless... And here's the biggie. Because I'm supposed to be including little bits of the previous route, which was abandoned. And this is why I like your idea. What I can do is move two of the track, or have two of the tracks separate, because they are running on the original roadbed, which was only one track, but you can widen that easily. But it could have been difficult to widen that to 4. And thus money would be saved by routing 2 tracks through there, and the 2 tracks through a different way that you wouldn't have to widen to 4 tracks. Or you wouldn't have to build 4 tracks.
And then have them meet up in the middle.
Yeah, they're going to meet back at Mason Valley Interlocking, or at Mason Valley Junction, yes, MVI, MVI, Mason Valley Interlocking. When we get over there. So, there we go. I like those ideas. I would like you guys in the comments to have some fun ideas like that. And I can use them. I've been trying to think about what I'm going to do, really, with all of that, with all of the sort of room we'll have, or with all of, we don't have a lot of abandoned right-of-way. We don't really have any outside of town. We don't have any down, and I was expecting to sort of leave around little bridges that are covered in whatever, covered in detritus, covered in greenery. But there hasn't really been a good place to do that, because the track, we've had difficulty enough figuring out where to put it. So, we're having some troubles, we were having some troubles with that, but in the end, I think we could have some fun with this. The problem is, I do need another tile here, because if I'm going through here, then this is too close. I need another tile here. Let me grab this, and then that, and that's going to look terrible. What a shame. Okay, so I need plateau tool. That is not great. Alright, give me this. And this is minimum sensitivity for that. Let's just turn it up. And it's going to look real bad on the edges, but we'll fix that with the plateau tool. Using that this way would have been a little bit trickier. But we're getting into the trap of we're making the backdrop too tall again. This is not necessarily the area where we want to be building tall hills in the background. This is relatively not, I wouldn't say not interesting, but it's not that hilly, steep land. But then again, I've talked about how the Berkshires continue to surprise me when I look around and see some fairly steep hills that sort of rise out of nowhere. Oh, let's turn that way down. And these rocky cuts on Interstate 90 that seem to just appear. It's not an area where you'd expect to see something like that, but there it is. And it's, sort of leaves me wondering, okay, well, where can I do better? Where to make it look more realistic, to make it look more like that. Which might not even be the most realistic looking thing when you look at it from the point of view of building something in trains. Also, when this whole area is covered with trees, it will be a little bit less apparent where the sort of lumps are. It'll be a little bit less obvious. So, I don't have to be that anal retentive over the stuff that's going to be in the hills, in the trees. I just have to make it generally hill-shaped, and everything else will be taken care of. Everything else will be fairly well hidden. And I find that the fact of the matter is when you have a set of hills, just the way they are, wandering into them and looking around them tends to find you a lot steeper and a lot more varied terrain than you would initially come to expect by looking at a hill on the outside. So, we can reflect that fairly easily, and I think we're going to do it just sort of by accident. Because that's the way it is. We're playing with this tool here instead of terrain tracks, so things are going to be very varied. Okay, so I'm going to have to pull this through here, and then through here, and then through here. So we have to run through this tile almost definitely. Which means I need to put a tile here because that needs to cover that area. Now, we're going to use the plateau tool in order to take care of this because this area is getting far along enough, and I can use the plateau tool with a high sensitivity to sort of assist with what I'm trying to do, at least to restore the hill appearance to the cliff that we created. There are cliffs around, though. Cliffs are something that you might see appear more often than you might think. There's the other idea that we need to not make the edge of the map the end-all, be-all of the world. We need to sort of allude to the fact that there are things beyond the map that we're just barely not seeing. And I think that's given in a couple of places so far, but I don't think it's given particularly well. And when we're out here in the wilderness, I think it provides an excellent opportunity to do something like that. Now, on the other hand, we need to be careful not to, for example, point any rivers off towards the middle of nowhere, where they would never possibly have an escape route to the ocean. Because then we're breaking the cardinal rule of rivers, where things are flowing nowhere. That may be the cardinal rule. Second rule might be, like, don't split rivers. Which I have already done that. Not on this map, but I've done it.
Can you connect those two tiles together without the other tile?
What do you mean?
So, like, build
What,
a
like this?
hill that makes... Yeah.
Yeah.
Build a hill that connects the two tiles without adding another tile?
No, I can't fill in this ground at all. It's not the world. It doesn't exist. The thing is, I'm going to have to pinpoint spots where... when you are driving either the train or, more poignantly, which this will be more common, when you're driving the boat. Because I'm going to put in some tracks for boats, like I said.
Tracks?
Yep. Everything's a train in this game, so... Yes. Track for a boat. Once I put those in, you're going to be able to drive a ship along the edge of the peninsula, but I have to be careful because on the ocean you can see really far, because it's the ocean. And if there is a spot where you can see the edge of a tile, like if you're looking this way and you can see that, I'm going to need to fill this in. That's not gonna...
To add buoys.
Hmm?
Add something to mark the edge of the map a couple feet away from the edge of the map, so that way, whatever that boat is doesn't go.
Well, you wouldn't be able to because it's on tracks. Everything's a train.
Yeah, but realistically, you're gonna need buoys.
Yeah, but realistically, there isn't an edge of the world.
But you can still put like little buoys.
And also, when you're out in the open sea, you don't follow buoys. You follow radar. Or, GPS. Which, I mean, it's the 50s, so you don't have... Well, you might have some commercial radars. I'm not sure when they started coming out. But either way, you would travel by, like, Dead Reckoning and stuff like that. You wouldn't necessarily travel... You wouldn't have buoys marking shipping lanes. You'd just know where they are, and you'd have to know where you were. Using a Dead Reckoning, which is the process of...
Or a compass.
Well, yeah, which is the process of using a compass and a sextant and tools
Like taking the thing
to figure out...
a glass of water and putting a leaf in it. Or a
No.
paper clip and having it make a compass out.
But Dead Reckoning is the process of using tools like a compass to figure out how far you've gone from your last known location on a map. So then you can say, okay, I've been traveling at 50 miles an hour for an hour, so I'm going to be 50 miles from this location where I started. And I know I'm going in this direction, so you can mark out on a map, say, okay, I've gone in this direction this far. Alright, so here's where I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to have one set of tracks go all the way to the water, which means they're going to be going downhill, which is why you might want to avoid these. They're going to be going downhill rather steeply. And the other set of tracks are going to curve off and stay a little bit closer to inland. Like so. Important thing...
You're gonna need a switch.
No, I won't. Important thing is keeping an eye on gradient. So I'll need to open the minimap, Control M, to open the minimap. I'll have to turn on gradients, like so. That's 0.74. That is not bad. It is close to the maximum that I would like, which is 1. But overall, it's not bad, so I think I'll keep it for now. The other thing I need to do is I do need to curve towards the general direction that we're going to be traveling, which is along the coast. I'm going to need to add a couple of spline points for this, and generally what I've been doing is I will build one track almost in its entirety, and then I'll come back into the other one. Now if I want that, because I need to straighten that out. The important thing is, though, we are a high-speed railroad, and what's one of the things that trains don't like?
Everything that's not straight.
Exactly. So I need to pay attention to my radius of curvature. So how tightly am I making these? How tight am I making these turns? That's not that loose. That's pretty tight. So I might have to pull this out a little bit farther. I wrote it almost dead on the beach in order to make it a radius that's good, in order to make it a wide enough curve. I think that's good, actually, because I'm going to pull this out this way. Take it one more time. And I think I'm going to pull this way a little bit. And that is a nice gradual curve. It's still kind of tight, but it's gradual. It's as gradual as we're going to get right now. So the other tracks are going to do about the same thing, but they're going to do it over here. The other thing is I still need to pay attention to the gradient on those other... Still need to pay attention to the gradient on those other tracks. On the ones that we built but didn't check. So these guys are going to be relatively high compared to those. And those are not... Oh. I'm going to say that looks weird. Straighten that. And this, we need to do a similar thing, where we pull this out to way over here. Oh, you know what? Let's rebuild that. Because I advanced those spline points so they wouldn't sit right. To there, and then to there. Straighten this, so we get a good idea of everything. There we go. We have two right-of-ways that are almost perfectly parallel. And that is cool. Might not be the most realistic, but we can make do, and we could even curve this more if we wanted to sort of show off how they're different. These are going downhill. This is going uphill. So I still have the mini-map open. This is 0.18. Are these actually going uphill, or are they going downhill and deceiving me? So that's that height. And then this is... No, I didn't want to use. I wanted to grab. Oh, it is going downhill. That's interesting. This is all flat, because I haven't done it yet. Let's work on this a little bit. It's almost cathartic. I do like doing this. It takes a while to get all these hills properly done. But I've always said I would love to be like the Bob Ross of trains, where I just sit here and I talk about whatever, and I place happy little mountains and happy little tracks, and we have no mistakes, only happy accidents. Except when I go oops, because I did something wrong. But unlike Bob Ross, I have the magic of the undo tool, which is something you don't get when you're painting. Alright, so that's a little lumpy. I was talking about the lumpiness when you weren't here. And how, when you cover everything with trees, it doesn't look as lumpy. So, more or less, I'm going to dump ground underneath this piece of track here to keep it at more or less the same height. Honestly, it could even get a little bit higher than it is currently. It could get higher than the other track. Doesn't really matter. Again, the terrain is terrain. It sort of all forms. Hypothetically, what we'd be looking at here is like the end of a terminal moraine for a glacier, is what this area would have originally been formed by, probably like tens or hundreds of thousands of years ago, before the railroad came through. And that's what would shape these hills, but I haven't really taken the time to point all the hills in the same direction, which is what you'd get. And also, I haven't really taken the time to make it as flat as it should be. So, this area should be flatter. It hypothetically would be flatter. But it's really tough to make a flat landscape and keep tabs on where you've raised the ground above sea level and where you haven't. Actually, the easiest way to do that would be to put water down everywhere and see where the Z fighting isn't. And that would be the area that's high enough, and everything else that's still flickering at you is area that's too low, and that you haven't done anything with. Because without specialized tools, you couldn't cause that Z fighting if you wanted to. And specialized tools, things that are in the game, but that I'm not using for this. Except for when I do. Like the raise ground to height tool. Which, I could put in sea level, I could put in 0 as a number, and that would be that. We would just set all the ground back to 0, which is exactly where it started. But, the other thing is, I did put like a tidal pool over there, big one, but the fact of the matter is this area, because it's oceanside and it doesn't have any protective islands, unlike Olive, with its barrier islands, you wouldn't necessarily keep a lake or a pool in place by the ocean for very long without it turning into part of the ocean, because waves would breach the little barrier, whatever it is, in not so long, and not so long on a geological timescale, and then it would just become part of the ocean because it would be breached, and you'd have a cove or an inlet, but not a lake. It wouldn't stand on its own. It would have a way for water to come in and go out of the ocean. So, I'm going to do a little bit over here. I do need to raise this back up a little bit, because this is our backdrop. And it should be high enough. It should at the very least be high enough to cover the fact that there's no tile here. So I'm going to raise this. The other thing I can do, which in order to show off depth, I could have a row of hills, and then a gap, and then another row of hills, and mountains, hills. None of these things are over probably a few hundred meters tall, so I do want the map to contain mountains, and I will have mountains. I'm just not sure when or where.
Or why or how.
No, I know why and how. No, I do know generally where. I have a big brown splotch on the map that says where the mountains are supposed to be. However, that's not specific. And in fact, until I started building this, I never had a scale. There's not a scale on the map. It doesn't tell you how far is 1 mile. So I don't know how long the railroads are. I sort of have been thinking merely based on travel times from one end of the map to the other. One end of the map to the other. Yeah. And giving it an average speed of 60 miles an hour, which is not realistic. Which is lower than one might expect. Or, it's much higher than you're going to get. Because average speed definitely includes station stops. For anything. For buses, for trains, all of it. Maybe not like a cruise ship, but
Cruise train.
Average speed includes station stops. So we have to take note of the fact that we are privy to the laws of the universe, and that every second we spend at a station is not only going to imply that we need to get back up to speed from that station, and also we need to slow down to arrive at that station, but we're going to spend all that time at that station going 0 miles an hour, and that will hurt our average speed. Because then we have a bunch of time where we're not moving. And so, my hopes for length of map and timetable are unrealistic at this point, because it assumes an average speed of 60. When the outer tracks, the local tracks, have a speed limit of 60. You cannot go faster than 60 miles an hour on those tracks. It's not allowed. And the inner tracks have a speed limit of about 70. They have a speed limit of 79. They have almost 80. But I didn't have 80 mile per hour invisible speed signs that were the same size, or that were the same type as the 60 mile an hour one, so I decided to leave it as 79. It's the 1950s. You're not going to go that fast anyways. It may be safe for faster operation, but this is interesting. This is particularly interesting because we have a train that runs directly along the beach, and this is far too close to the water, so we will push the beach back. But we have a train that runs very, very close to the water, and for the first time, we don't have mountains right up on the water. Which means that this was not the opportune time to do this. So I might just have to try it somewhere else. Because I would have to fill in all of this with hill that's at this level, which this level is what? 10? Tops? What's the top of this hill? 11. Yeah, ish. So I would have to fill this in to that, and we for once have an area that actually looks, it's very nice and flat and leads up to mountains. However, I need to fill it in. Because if I left this alone, and we had all this area at 0, which is sea level. If we had all this area at 0, and an ocean right there, given a very short span of geological time, it would turn into ocean itself. There doesn't appear to be a river flowing into it, so there'd be nothing to deposit sand, there'd be nothing to create a delta. It's just flat area by the ocean. And flat area by the ocean does not last very long on its own. What I could do is have a very wide, or not wide, but have a shallow, meandering river come through this area from here down. But I already have quite a few rivers. We have the estuary, and on the other side we have the Antelope River here, or the Deer Run, I should say, and then the Funataro River there, which wraps back around. I haven't had another river in a while, so maybe I should add one. But I don't know. That would help me shape this area. Yeah, stream. It's small.
Or a waterfall.
Well, waterfalls generally come with rivers. When's the last time you saw a waterfall without a river attached to it? And the shower head doesn't count.
The one near my house.
Yeah? What, does the water just appear out of nowhere and then disappear?
No, it's probably about it. There's a little waterfall, and then there's like 3 feet of water. That's about it.
And then where does it go? Because it doesn't just disappear.
I don't know, because there's a little bridge you walk over.
So, probably into a pipe.
Yeah, that's not a river.
Yeah, but it's still a source of water. Or it's an exit for water. And it was a river or a stream at one point before it got put in a pipe. Yeah, this is very flat. This is extremely flat.
You could make a crater lake.
I could. I need to build a volcano for that. Whoa! I might put one of those somewhere. But that's the kind of thing where that's of such enormous scale that I would have to dedicate a section of the map to it. You wouldn't be able to run a train to it because of the fact that it's a volcano caldera and it would have steep sides. But I don't know, it'd be cool. It'd be really cool. That's a cool factor that I can consider. But it wouldn't be down here. Alright, so this way.
I mean, you could also just pull a Hawaii and make little tiny islands
Yep.
out of that, and then put track on it. Like if you zoom out to where that water is, where the track's going up against, you could put little islands in it, get rid of some of the water, put little islands in it of track,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then curve it around and have the little island be where, like a dam type thing, where the water stops, so that way it doesn't hit the track.
I mean, I was playing with track and water and islands all the way through the estuary here. And I was playing with islands all the way back at Olive here. Look at all these guys.
You still want it to go through. You said you didn't want it to go all the way up here.
No, it's going to run in here.
Yeah, so what you could do is you could take
No.
the
Don't hit the microphone.
track.
Look at that. Sorry, audience. That was really loud.
Take the track or put little islands in it, and then take the track and put it on the island and curve it to that last little bit of brown and have it go that way.
Well, I mean, again, track on islands is what I was doing in the estuary.
It would probably be an easier way to get around than the curving around.
Unless you consider the fact that those bridges are going to be expensive. Oops, I just deleted. Yeah. The thing that I need to pay attention to is that. How much would this have cost? I've already spent a lot of money, hypothetical money, of course, but money, on crossing the estuary in a direct line instead of going all the way around the edge. Now, that isn't actually that far, but it's something to consider. Oh, that is very... I have the sensitivity turned way up. Let's turn that down. I don't know why this lump is here, but it's staying. See, the other one I had a very defined riverbed, and now I don't. And, at the very least, if I can give the appearance of going uphill. Why is it not working? There we go. If I can give the appearance of going uphill, that'll be good enough. But right now I don't have any of that. I'm just trying to create a river of sorts. Such a pain in the butt. So we have the beginnings of a river. The thing we need to pay attention to is where is the river going? The river's got to go up here and over there. Which means it's got to cross this way, which means it needs a valley going this way. Or some sort of lower area, if you can call it a valley. It's going to be very shallow. And then this way, and then this way, and then this way, and this way along the edge of this hill here, and then through the gap here, which we are going to have to lower a little bit. Because this isn't Potten's Kill, this is going to be a little bit more flat. A little bit, though. Still, this is still quite an uphill. It's still quite a descent for a river to make. But that's something right there. Okay, so back to the river. Stream. Crick, as some people would say. Alright, so if we go this way, that is okay. I said that is okay. That is not okay. Because that's too wide. And that's not good. So, tighten it up a little bit, lower the radius back down, connect the little dots that I've now made. And that river is now very, very straight, which is another problem. Rivers aren't straight. Especially not funny little windy ones. Certainly not ones of this size. I think, I'm not sure if it's been proven, so to speak, but it's a general rule of thumb that a river cannot flow in a dead straight line for more than 3 times its width. So, even this is a lot. Even this is a lot, but I should be concentrating on getting the river up. I need to get it uphill, so let's delete all this, because there's water over here.
Can't go uphill, he says.
Well,
And then tries to make it go uphill.
the water's coming downhill, but the river, the way I'm building it, I have to build it uphill, because I'm building it from the ocean to the hills. And it's easier to build a river uphill than it is downhill. At least I think. With the time that I've spent trying to do that. But we'll see how, you know, let's see how far inland we can get without bringing it up at all. Okay, pretty far, considering. Well, we need to tighten this up, though. Now we'll do the same thing again. And let's turn sensitivity all the way down. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Pretty much invisible on the map. I don't know why that's happening necessarily, but it should be visible. But ground is superseding water now, which is interesting. Again, I think this has the appearance of getting higher, which is alright. But at least, we have another 15 minutes or so. I at least want to get the river itself, or the railroad itself, to the river. This entire project has been induced by the desire to split this up. The other thing I need to do is make it reasonable with the ground. Make it reasonable that this actually is an easier route to take than going along the waterfront. At least an easier route to build than going along the waterfront. Maybe it was done for maintenance reasons. That's not a bad idea. Because if you think about it, a track that's too close to the waterfront is going to incur a lot of maintenance because of saltwater corrosion. but also because of weather and waves.
So, just so you know, when you zoom out, you can see that the track is on the water. At some point, the track was on the water.
Where?
Or it was. Might not be anymore. It
Yeah.
was.
Okay. That's a little bit more reasonable of a distance. But this is also almost at 0, so we need to figure out the descent profile of this. 0.62, 0.02. Actually, that was a pretty swift decline to almost 0. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to raise this a little bit, so that's a little bit higher than sea level. And this is trains that are bound in this direction too, so they won't have to climb out of the waterfront in this direction. They'll have to climb out of it in the other direction. Also, the other thing is that spline point there is not in advanced mode, which means it's going to stick to wherever the ground is. Ground in this case being at 1.75. I think I'm going to move it up to 2. And then do that. And then we'll continue with the track at 2 meters. Which was a very early thing to do in terms of railroading, was to make track that was this close to water level. Especially if you did not have big waves. But something I could put here when I go to build is I could put a seawall in place, which would protect the tracks. I need to turn in this direction without making it an obnoxious kink. But I don't want to have a curved bridge either. Move this to over here. Okay. So now I'm going to apply 2 to both of these. Actually, I'm going to get a little bit higher because we have actual ground on this side, and not just water almost. 3.88 sounds good. And actually, I'll slowly have that increase up to 3.88 to make it over the bridge. The bridge that we don't have yet. Yeah, so this could be smart as sort of a remnant of the original line. Let me undo that, though, real quick, 'cause I don't like the way this looks. That's better? Yeah, that's smooth, I guess. Smooth curves. It's necessary. Okay. Now we have to continue connecting the river to its origin point somewhere in the hills. Let's try like 5 meters. How high is that? That is really high, actually. So let's not do 5 meters. Well, let's put a 5 meter stretch and then lower it until... Okay, that's not good. Because that's below sea level. We're putting the water below sea level. Let's increase the height of everything over here, including the stuff that's not actually part of the river, because I don't want to accidentally have some part that is below sea level when it shouldn't be. So over here, even in the hills, take this opportunity to make things a little bit more gradual and nice. Especially over here. Okay, so we've got one of them to the river. Last thing I want to do this episode is get both of these to where the river is. Both, whoops. Both forks of the railroad to where the river is. I think that isn't going to be the only time we split two tracks of a railroad. But we won't really have that opportunity that much on the VMR, because the Volga Mountains Railroad is pretty much all single track. Almost the entire main line is single track. So that's just its own problem. Oh no. I just raised the ocean. No, why is it connecting? Yeah, no, it's connecting for some reason. It's not connected, I swear. There's got to be something over here that's attached. Some water that I'm not seeing. So there, this is 1.68 meters above sea level. Let's make sure, yep, that's what I thought. This all needs to be raised because it's too low. It's lower than it should be. But the bright side is we're sort of getting away with it. We're sort of getting away with the way it looks with this relatively shallow river, stream, very small, very small in pretty much everything. It isn't going up very much. It isn't going much of anywhere in this stretch. Yeah. But we do have to think about, okay, where does this water come from? Because it's not appearing out of thin air. Water doesn't do that. Well, not counting rain, water doesn't appear out of thin air. All rivers eventually, all rivers at one point were rain, so I guess that's fair. But in this situation, we're more concerned about, does the river itself lead to a place that would collect enough water to be part of a river? Does it lead to an area where we would get river coming from that, or where we would get even stream? Now in this we've got this pretty wide area, this wide basin, so we could figure that, okay, yeah, river could be flowing from here, water could be flowing from here, just based on rain. There's only two places. There's only two places that water for rivers comes from, and rain is both of them. But one of them is rain that's become groundwater, and thus is a spring. So what happens is it took me a little bit to understand this. A spring, like you hear about, like Poland Springs, is water that is coming up from the ground on its own because it is under pressure, because there is a point somewhere where the water table is higher than the ground at whatever the location the spring is. So there may be a hill nearby, like this one for example, where the water table in the middle of the hill is about here. Which means that, if you drilled down at the middle of the hill and you got to this depth beneath the middle of the hill, you'd hit water. Even though down here, the water's down here. But that's because the water is flowing within the dirt in the hill, within the dirt and stone in the hill, down and coming out at a lower point. This is not going to be a river that's, run completely by a spring, but when you're surrounded by hills, that happens. Alright, so let's decrease the radius on this a lot. No, let's, oh, you know what? There's some water under here somewhere. My water sense is tingling. Try 4. Okay, 4 is good. Actually pretty good. Let me try, because we're about to come into an area where 4 is going to be too high. Yeah, right about there. So let's remove that water. Let me try 3. Ah. And it just connects. That's the other good thing. I was talking about Tane the other day, and came to the conclusion almost that basically the lack of a download limit is the best thing that came with Tane. The best thing that happened. And to an extent, yeah, it kind of is. But the other thing... There we go, that looks better. The other thing is the fact that water connects to itself at different elevations. So you can have a stream that flows. Ish. A stream that looks like it flows, I guess, because water isn't going anywhere. It's all static. But you have a stream that looks like it flows. Whereas before you would have a stream, and if you wanted it to come down a hillside, I almost said go up a hillside, but if you wanted to come down a hillside, then what you'd have to do is you'd have to either use a spline, which always looks terrible. River splines always look terrible. Or you would have to have water at different elevations separated by dams or locks or something. You know, rocks or waterfall objects, which there's only really one of, and it's kind of obnoxious. Although I will probably find myself using it at some point. It tends to make its way into just about every map, somehow. And we've got a few minutes left. Let me see if I can get this track all the way to there. See if I can get this track all the way to the river without too much trouble, which it doesn't look like it's going to be possible, because I need this to be flatter. And I'm going to sort of force that, which is not something I really wanted to do. But there has to be a reason that this goes in this direction. There has to be a reason that this goes this way, why it's easier to do this than it is to go anywhere else. And the answer to that is, well, because the track was up here, and we just had to bring it a little bit higher, and then we just had to lay it. You know, without too much cut or fill, we just had to get it from... Whoops. Without too much cut or fill, we had to get it to the water. And it should be feasible. It should be doable. But I need to pay attention to the height of stuff. This, you know, to get up here is something else. It's really something else. Although I don't think it's that bad in the way of elevation. I think I'm going to put this at 11 even. We do have this, which this is not good. I'm going to need to either add more ground to make this more reasonable, or just say F it and leave it alone. I don't know. We'll say it was some, you know, some engineer's pet project was. All right, we've got to find a way over the river that's higher up, somewhere that isn't directly along the coast, for the simple sake of the line along the coast is going to be problematic. Okay, that's 1.35. Oh, that's a negative 2%. That's a negative 1.39%. Alright, so let's lower this actually. Let's lower this to like 10. That's going to lower that, which is good. It's going to flatten it out a little bit, which looks weird. But it's a negative 2%, which isn't good. That's 7.3. Let's make this 7. And then that right there. Okay, so, and I accidentally got rid of the minimap when I wanted to use it. That is still too much. What is this? What is this 0.12 going on here? It's still too much. This is still too steep. Oh, you know what? Because I adjusted the wrong thing. Did I? This right here. If I lower this more, What if I lower it to like 9.5? It's the last thing I want to do before I round out this episode is just finish this right here. 0.96. Still a lot. Still pretty significant. It's pushing the limits of what the Gilson Eastern wanted out of its main line. But, oh, you know what? We do need to still change it because this is no good. We need it to not be sort of burying the other line or hovering on its own. So, let's change 9. Change to 9. On the bright side, it's beginning to even itself out. That's not good, though. We're burying the other tracks. I think that... Oh, we're getting close to passable. It's something I'll have to play with next time to get this together. And then these guys aren't going to come together for a while. I might run this guy farther inland and keep this guy along the coast a little bit more. We've got another nice little river here, which was...
And 2 other tracks to build.
Yeah. Which was surprisingly easier to take care of than... surprisingly easier to get done than Antelope, because I kind of know the technique now. Because this is my first time really doing this. This is my first time playing with these, with the ability to connect water. But, yeah, we are going to run into this problem with the coastline thing again, and what I might start doing is plateauing once we get past Mason Valley. In fact, I might start doing it once we get out here. So, anyways, it might be a solution to our track problem. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next week. Trainman,
Madison.
out.